I'm very happy to be glad to start a new topic with us. We're just through with business organization. So we are moving to a new topic today, and the topic is the theory of consumer behavior. The theory of consumer behavior, which is also known as utility. So first we look at the definition. Definition. What is utility? Now utility is defined as the want satisfying power of a commodity, which varies from person to person. Apart from this definition of utility, we also define utility as the amount of satisfaction that the consumer derives from the consumption of a given unit of a commodity at a particular time. So simply put, utility talks about satisfaction. Now, under utility, we have what is called the concept. And under the concept, you have what is called marginal utility. And what do we mean by marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional satisfaction or utility derived from an additional unit of a commodity. The additional satisfaction derived from an additional unit of a commodity. And to get this additional satisfaction, you add the utility derived from each unit consumed. So utility derived from each additional unit consumed added together will give you what is called marginal, will give you what is called total utility, while each of the utility derived will give you what is called marginal utility. Then we also move to the next concept, which is called total utility. Total utility is the sum of satisfaction derived from different units of a commodity consumed by a consumer. I'll come again. The sum of utility or satisfaction derived from different units of a commodity consumed by a consumer. So when you add those different units of the satisfaction derived by a consumer from different units of a commodity, what you will get is called the total utility. Now moving on from the concept, we now look at what we refer to as marginal utility analysis. Now it's very important for you to know that this marginal utility analysis was formulated by Alfred Marshall, a British economist, and he explained it like the diagram we are seeing there. He explained it using someone that is very thirsty. You see, under the marginal utility analysis, what the diagram here is showing you that if somebody is very thirsty, that the first glass or bottle of water the person takes, it will give him more satisfaction than the second one. You can see the thermometer there. It's showing you that as the man is taking more glass of water or more bottle of whatever drink he's taking, the utility is diminishing. The first picture there shows you that it's very high. You can see the green line. Second one shows that after taking the second one, it has reduced. Then after taking the third one, the thing is almost not there again, which means that his satisfaction has reached what we call zero level. So this diagram is actually explaining to us that as you are taking more unit of a commodity, your satisfaction derived per additional unit is diminishing. Then we move on to the next one, which is what we call the assumption to utility analysis. And what are the assumptions? Now you have about 10 assumptions here. You have what is called, the first one is utility is a cardinal concept, meaning that it can be measurable. Utility is measurable. Then it is, the second assumption is that it is addictive. That means you can add the utility you derive from one consumption of one goods to another. It is addictive. Then also money is assumed to be constant. That means the amount of money you spend on each commodity is the same. On each unit of commodity is the same. Then also the hypothesis is independent of utility, meaning that the goods you are talking about has nothing to do with the satisfaction. That means whatever we are using as hypothesis to explain utility is different from the concept itself. So utility is independent of utility. Then the consumer is rational, meaning that the consumer is reasonable. He is not an irrational person. So he only consumes commodity in which he derives satisfaction from. Then the next one, he has full knowledge of the availability of commodities and their technical qualities. So he knows about the commodity and also technical quality of the commodity. Then also he possesses perfect knowledge of the choice of commodity. He has the perfect knowledge of the choice of commodity. Then there are no substitute to the commodity. There is no substitute commodity. Then also the utility are not influenced by variation in their prices. So the price does not affect the utility that you derive. So whether the price is increasing or reducing, it doesn't have anything to do with utility. Then lastly, it ignores complementary between goods. That means that two goods are complementing each other, has nothing to do with their satisfaction. Then we now move from there to talk about the law of diminishing marginal utility. What do we mean by the law of diminishing marginal utility? Now, this law, according to Alfred Marshall, is the additional benefit which a consumer derives from a given increase of his stock of a thing. The additional benefit which a consumer derives from a given increase of his stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in the stock that he already has. Now, this may sound a bit complex, so let me break it down for us. The law of diminishing marginal utility simply means that, the satisfaction that you derive per additional unit of a commodity consumed diminishes or decreases as total consumption increases. The satisfaction derived per additional unit of a commodity consumed decreases as total consumption increases. So that is simply what the law says, and vice versa, which means that the higher the unit of a commodity that you consume, the lower the satisfaction, or the lower the unit that you consume, the higher the satisfaction. Then we move from this law to now look at what we call the assumption to the law. And what are the assumptions to the law? Number one, taste, preference, etc. of the consumer remain constant. So it's assumed that the taste preferences of the consumer is constant. Secondly, that the income of the consumer also remain constant. It does not change. Then thirdly, that the unit of the goods are identical or similar. That means consuming the same unit of goods at every point in time. Then fourthly, the process of consumption is continuous. That means it continues to consume. It does not stop. The consumption is on a continuous basis. Then the fifth one, the unit of the goods are not very small in size. The unit of the goods are not very small in size. What it means is that they are not of infinitesimal quantity. You consume the goods in units, but they are not very small in size. Then let's look at the importance. The importance of the law of diminished marginal utility. Number one, the first important, number one, taxation policy, framing taxation policy by the government. The government use it in formulating taxation policy. They consider the law in formulating their taxation policy. Then number two, it is useful to consumer to regulate its expenditure. The consumer consider utility derived from a commodity to determine how much he will spend on it. So they use it to regulate the expenditure. Then thirdly, it's also useful to monopolist consumer in fixing the price of his product. So a monopolist consider the utility that is derived from a commodity, and this law in particular, to determine how much to charge on a product, because it's a product that gives the consumer a higher satisfaction that they will charge a higher price. Then fourthly, is the basis for the law of demand. The law of demand is actually derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility, and it is used to explain the law of demand. Then the fifth point, differentiated value is used and value in exchange. So there is different value in use and there is value in exchange. What do you mean by that? There's a value that a commodity has in use and there's a value in exchange. When you consume a commodity, it has a value, and also the value that it has also determine the value in exchange. So if you want to engage yourself in exchange of one commodity under, you look at the utility of that commodity, and that will determine the value of that commodity to whoever is consuming it. Now we move from the law to now, I think we still have more on the law of the marginal utility, and that's further explanation of the law. Here we are using the example of Apple. We are looking at the case of a consumer consuming a particular commodity, which in this case talk about apple. Now the first apple the consumer takes gives him a higher level of utility. So as he's taking more apple, the utility he gets is reducing by additional apple that he takes. So as he's consuming more apple, his utility is diminishing, is falling. That's what the illustration above is trying to tell us. So in conclusion, what we are saying is it that under the law of the marginal utility, we obtain less and less marginal utility from the successive unit of a commodity that we consume. So as you are consuming more of a commodity, your utility or marginal utility is falling. So that's very important. So I will now move from the law to now look at the graphical illustration. Now this one I will more or less prefer. You check the table. We have a table there showing the unit of output consumed, the total utility and marginal utility. You can see that as unit consumed is increasing from the first to the sixth unit, even though the total utility is increasing from 8 to 13, 16, 18, but the marginal utility is diminishing, is decreasing from 8, 5, 6. You can see. So as it's consuming more apple, the utility is diminishing per additional unit, even though total utility is increasing. Now you can see the graph there showing total utility curve to be rising, but the marginal utility is falling. So that falling marginal utility curve is telling us, is explaining the law that the higher the unit you consume, the lower your marginal utility. That's what that sloping part of the marginal utility curve is indicating to us. So it's very important for you to take note of that. And I also advise you that on your own, you can see the table there. You can just copy the information on the table as quickly as possible and try to plot the graph yourself, because you can be asked to draw the marginal utility curve, or you can be asked to draw the total utility curve. Now, and briefly speaking, I would just like to state this one, even though it's not in the diagram here, that the relationship between your total utility and marginal utility, which is also very important for you to note. So very important. When total utility is rising, your marginal utility is falling. When your total utility is rising, the marginal utility is falling. When your total utility is at maximum, the highest point, you can see it on the graph there. When total utility is at maximum, which on the table is indicated by 18, where total utility is 18, you can see that the marginal utility there is 0. So at 18, marginal utility is 0. That's the highest point. So when total utility is at maximum, the marginal utility is 0. And when total utility is falling, as indicated on the table there by 15, when there's a fall in total utility, the marginal utility becomes negative. You can see it in the diagram there. It falls below the y-axis, so it becomes negative. So when total utility is rising, marginal utility is falling. When total utility is maximum, marginal utility is 0, and when total utility is falling, the marginal utility becomes negative. Please take note of the following point. Then finally, okay, this is just the explanation of the graph which I have just explained to you. So you can just see it yourself. Look at the explanation of the graph. The saturation point is where total utility is constant or maximum, and that's where marginal utility is 0. And when the marginal utility begins to decline, when marginal utility declines below, it becomes negative, and that's when total utility is falling. So please take note of all this one. It is very, very important. Then you have the limitations to utility. The law of the marginal, the limitations, they are there. Number one, different units consumed must be identical. Very important. Then different unit consumed should also be of standard unit. Then the consumption must be continuous. Then the law does not apply to certain articles like gold, money is not applicable to things like that. Then the shape of utility curve may be affected by the presence or absence of articles which are substitute to it. So if you have a substitute to the goods, it will affect the shape. So these are some of the limitations to the law. Then in conclusion, it is very important for you to know that the law, the concept of utility is very, very important in economics. Very, very important. It is very unique and very, very important. And it's a topic that normally comes out in both your WAEC and NEC questions. So I would advise you to go through it very, very well. And as a form of assignment, I will advise you the table that we just go through now, which I ask you to copy it, then draw the total utility and marginal utility curve, and then state the relationship between them. Relationship between your total utility and marginal utility. So in the next class, we continue from here. Thank you very much.